Hello, I am Sceprenx. I run Atlantian Mermail combo hybrid fusion deck, and I am the resident king of games at Team Northwest Warriors. And I'm going to do a little rundown of how my deck works and why I run what I run at what levels, basically how it works. So the first card I'm going to focus on is Deep Sea Diva, which is currently limited, and for good reason. It's a level 2 water type Sea Serpent tuner that whenever you normal summon it, you get to special summon a level 3 or lower Sea Serpent monster from your deck. With all the rest of the Atlantian archetypes, this lets you get out a huge number of low-level monsters that can have a lot of different effects with your boss monsters and a lot of synergy with the rest of the Mermail and Atlantian archetypes. And so for that reason, it's one of your main engine cards. Next is Poseidra, which I run at 3. It's one of your main boss monsters, and it allows you to pull it from the hand or the graveyard when you have 3 level 3 or lower water type monsters. When you pull it out like that, you get to pull all spells and traps back to the hand, and if it's a very back row heavy deck, their monsters will actually take an attack point hit. It's also level 7, so if you get multiple out, which you totally can, you will be able to go into any rank 7 XCs. I prefer Big Eye for a lot of monsters, for a lot of decks that run a lot of monsters. The next card I'm going to talk about is Atlantian Infantry. Heavy Infantry is another card that I run at 3. And it's a level 2 Sea Serpent effect monster that lets you normal summon twice in one turn. And whenever it's sent to the graveyard to activate the effect of a water monster like Poseidra, you get to destroy any face-up card on the field, which is incredibly useful because not only are you getting the effect that you're sending it to the graveyard for, but you're also getting another bit of destruction power. And it also lets you normal summon, so you can go Infantry into Diva, which lets you pull out potentially 3 level 3 or lower water monsters to get a Poseidra first turn. And it's overall a really strong card and a great addition to the deck. The next Atlantian card I'm going to focus on is Dragoons, which is currently semi-limited. And it's a level 4 Sea Serpent effect monster that lets any level 3 or lower Sea Serpent monsters attack directly. And when it's sent to the graveyard to activate a water monster effect, you can add any Sea Serpent card from your deck to your hand, which is really useful, and I'll explain why once I get to this next card, which is Neptubis the Atlantian Prince, which I run at 2. Which is a level 1 Sea Serpent effect monster that has a bunch of different effects, and it's really one of the main engine cards, like Diva, like Infantry, and it lets you send any Sea Serpent monster from the deck to the grave, and then lets you pull an Atlantian card from the deck to the hand. So if you send Atlantian Dragoons, you can pull one Atlantian card and 1 Sea Serpent card from your deck to your hand, which lets you get an Atlantian monster like Poseidra if you're going to go to get into Poseidra, or Mermail Abyss Megalo, which is the next card I'm going to focus on. And the last thing, when Neptubis himself is sent to the graveyard to activate a water monster's effect, he gets to special summon a Atlantian monster from the grave. So when you send Atlantian Dragoons with his effect, you can pull it out whenever he leaves the field, and it's a pretty useful card to keep around. And then Mermail Abyss Megalo, which I also run at 2, is a level 7 Sea Serpent effect monster that is obviously a water type, and similar to Poseidra, it's one of your main boss monsters, and it allows you to send 2 other water monsters from the hand to the graveyard to special summon it from your hand, and when you do, you get to pull an Abyss spell and trap card, spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, which I use the Abyss Scales, and you can tribute a face-up water type monster and lets it attack twice in the battle phase for this turn. So overall, this gives you a ton of different ways to activate water monsters' effects. It's really, really useful when you combine it in conjunction with a Infantry and a Neptubis. You get to pull stuff from the graveyard and take out some of their field. It's really useful and gives you a powerful monster to boot. And the Abyss Scales, which I'll get into once I reach my spells, actually raise his attack and gets you have protection from either monsters, spells, or trap effects. So it's a really useful card that gives you a lot of utility and offense. Next Atlantian card is Atlantian Marksman, which I run at 2, which basically is level 3 or lower bait that you get. You can send it to the graveyard, pop set cards. When it does battle damage, you get to special summon an Atlantian from the deck, which very rarely happens. But if you do get battle damage, like if you do get to a spot where you can lower their attack enough, or they just have low attack monsters, you can use Atlantian Marksman's effect to really get out some more power in the battle phase, which you can still use. Atlantian Attack Squad, I run at 1 because it's a level 3 or lower, and it doesn't have a really useful effect. Whenever there's another fish, sea serpent, or aqua type monster on the field, it gains 800 attack. So for a level 3, it gets 2200 attack when it's surrounded by things it's good at, which is useful when you have a clear field or when you're trying to really rush someone down. But it doesn't have the same recyclability or utility that the other Atlantean archetype cards offer to the deck, so I keep it at 1. Another card that I keep at 1, moving into the Mermails, is the Mermail Abyssland, which is your face-down bait. When you're cautious about someone and you know that they're very strong and you don't really want to throw out your combos in danger of the high-level monsters getting popped, you can pull it out of Abyssland, and whenever it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can pull a Mermail from the deck and special summon it. So that means you can get out your Mermail Abyss Megalo, which is a substantially stronger monster that will give you a bit more, of a cushioning blow if they're really on your case. Next Mermail card is Abyss Turge, which I use usually in conjunction with another card like Infantry or something. And when it's normal or special summoned, you can discard a water monster to the graveyard, and you can target a level 3 or lower water monster from your graveyard and add that target to your hand. So that's really useful if you want to bring back an engine card like Devo or Infantry or Neptibus. I don't really use it for much else though, as it is a level 4, and I keep it at 1 for that reason, but it is useful in situations where you really need like a clutch card to recycle. Legendary Atlantean Trident, I keep it 1. You can tribute one of this card and one other face-up water monster, and pull a Poseidra from deck or graveyard. You don't get Poseidra's effect when it activates though, so that kind of sucks, but it's a useful card. If you just have an Infantry and a Trident, you can pull out a Poseidra, and then you can have more graveyard cards for Call of the Atlanteans, which I'll get to in a minute. Abyss Gund. Another card that I keep at 1, if it's discarded to the graveyard, you can target a Mermail in your graveyard, except another Abyssland, and special summon it, so it brings back Abyss Megalo, pretty much. And then Abyss Hild, which is the last monster that I run in this deck, and if it's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a Mermail from your hand. It's really simple in the same way. If you have, 2 Abyss Megalos in your hand, then you can pull out 2 that way.
So would you call this deck monster heavy?
Oh, yeah. This deck is a very monster heavy, main deck focused, rush down, monster spamming kind of a deck. You really focus around recycling your monsters to get their graveyard effects, to pull out your boss monsters, to pull off some wicked combos. Vampire and Scarecrow, if you don't know what it does, you should. It negates 1 attack per turn and doesn't get destroyed. Aquamirror Cycle it gives you more recycle components. Negate attack for when you're kind of desperate. It's a counter trap. It's an ace in the hole that you can pull out. Dimensional Prison, remove from play an attacker. It's useful when you really need something gone. Breakthrough Skill negates effects, really useful on heavy monster decks. Wire Trap for back row, it's a counter trap, can't hardly be negated, and it's really useful if you really need something to happen. And then I run Draining Shield and Magic Cylinder for obvious reasons, because they're just really powerful and basic trap cards that just really work out in the deck pretty well.
A lot of generic stuff in there.
Trap
section.
I do run a lot of generic traps, and the reason I don't use more of the Abyss traps is because I don't run a ton of Mermails in this deck, and so I really prefer the generic stuff that has a lot of flexibility and isn't so situational with your monsters, because it's really just more useful when you have more flexibility with when to use them, and they're arguably stronger, because a well-timed Draining Shield can put you back into the fight like nothing else can, or Magic Cylinder can kill people. Call of the Atlanteans lets you take 3 level 3 or lower water monsters and special summon all of them. You can't special summon for the rest of the turn. It's a quick spell. I run 3 for really obvious reasons. Salvage, I also run 3, adds 2 water monsters with 1500 less attack back to the hand, lets you get your engine back. Aquajet, run it 2, target a sea serpent or aqua type monster, and it gains 1000 attack permanently. Be careful of Dark Rebellion, because that's really becoming more common. And then the Abyss Scales, you can equip them to Mermail monsters, which you'll only use on Abyss Megalo, and it gives you attack points and either monsters, spell, or trap negations, so that's really useful. Big Wave, Small Wave lets you basically ignore the summoning conditions for one of your boss monsters by just getting rid of one of them. And Surface is useful because it pulls out a card like Abyssland or Infantry that are meant to be in defense position, and just special summons it without having to worry about using your normal for that turn. And that's pretty much the deck. So that's my deck list. It works really well. I really think that it's a very strong deck that's overlooked, especially when you consider the likes of the current state of the meta. Even though you have like the crazy stuff like Draco, Pal, like Phantom Knights, all that kind of stuff. Though they do have a lot of power, there's a lot of stuff to be said about a deck that doesn't need all of the fancy pendulums and extra deck. Extra deck is really simple. Leviathan Dragon, Nightmare Shark, Abyss Dweller, Dark Rebellion, Bahamut Shark, Big Eye, Black Rose Moonlight, Meteor Burst, Stardust, Thought Ruler Archfiend, Blackwing Dragon, Red Dragon Archfiend. A lot of generic stuff that gives you a lot of situational abilities, toolboxing. You can pull out any of them with relative ease, and that's really how the deck works. This is Sceprenx signing off.